Hi, everybody. We're just going to take another minute or two before we get started. I can see people are still trying to get into the webinar, so we're going to give them a minute, and we will be starting in just a minute. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's see. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Chris Vonamy. I am the Chief Stormwater Engineer with the DuPage County Stormwater Management Department. And we are here for a behind-the-scenes webinar where we will learn about the Illinois Urban Manual, grant-funded green infrastructure projects, and an update on the East Branch Watershed Plan. We have several of these workshops throughout the year. We find that these workshops are a great way to connect like-minded organizations and individuals who are concerned with protecting our local lakes, rivers, and streams. These workshops are part of our public outreach and education programs and help us meet requirements outlined in our permit with the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. Typically, we have the workshops in person, but due to COVID-19, we're using Zoom meetings as our platform to host this webinar. Hopefully, we don't have any technical issues, but if we do, please bear with us and we will get them rectified as soon as possible. Before we begin, I want to throw out a couple of thank yous. First of all, thank you to Mary Mitros. She is our Stormwater Communications Supervisor, and she is behind the scenes today running the program. I'd also like to thank the Conservation Foundation. They are our partners for all of these workshops and webinars, specifically Jan Rail. Jan is the DuPage County Program Director for the foundation, and she helped line up our speakers for the program this afternoon. And once again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon also. These are unprecedented times for all of us. There's uncertainty and disruption of our lives due to the global COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that everyone continues to practice good hygiene by washing their hands frequently, social distancing, and if you do feel sick or ill, please isolate or quarantine to prevent the further spread of this coronavirus. You know, just on a side note, my kids are getting very frustrated with the stay-at-home orders, especially now that they've been extended through the month of May. I believe they would prefer to be back at school rather than being here locked up with me. So anyway, I told them we are going to do something fun this weekend. We're going to go bowling. That seemed to lift their spirits a little bit, so we are looking forward to that 12-hour road trip to Georgia. We could probably use a little more family time together anyway. We might even drive down to the beaches in Florida. And then when we get back, top off that trip with a great 14-day stay at Edward Hospital. Anyway, sorry about that. That's not important right now. What is important is we have 3 great speakers with us this afternoon to cover these various topics regarding the Illinois Urban Manual, grant-funded green infrastructure projects, and an update on the East Branch of the DuPage River Watershed Plan. We have Patrick McPartland from the Kane DuPage Soil and Water Conservation District, Lee Hauser from Geocentric Consultants, and our very own Mary Beth Falsey from the Stormwater Management Department. But before I turn things over to them, I want to tell you about our chat feature. If you do have questions or comments during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and we will relay those on to the presenters following their presentations, and we'll get to as many of those as time will allow. So with that, I think I'll turn things over to our first presenter. Our first presenter is Mary Beth Falsey. Again, she's from DuPage County, the Stormwater Management Department. Mary Beth is our water quality supervisor. She's been with the county for 16 years, and she's going to be telling us about updates to the East Branch Watershed Plan with regard to water quality improvements. So with that, Mary Beth, take it away.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Go ahead and share my screen here, hopefully. Do you guys got you have a full screen there, I hope? So again, I'm Mary Beth Falsey. I'm with DuPage County Stormwater Management. I'm gonna go over our East Branch Watershed Plan today. This is a EPA 604B grant-funded project. Going to try to switch through my slides here, hopefully. There we go. So a little bit of background on DuPage County Stormwater Management. In case you're not familiar with our department, we are a countywide program which was established in 1989. We are guided by the Stormwater Management Planning Committee and the Stormwater Management Plan. We enforce the DuPage County countywide stormwater management and floodplain ordinance. And we operate flood control facilities that have a floodwater capacity of nearly 6 billion gallons. Our department consists of 6 programs, including watershed management and water quality. The East Branch Plan is a project involving both of those programs. Our department also handles floodplain mapping, regulatory services, flood control operations and maintenance, and a shared services program. So some background on the East Branch Watershed Plan. The Illinois EPA has identified the East Branch DuPage River as an impaired waterway. So we were going to take the EPA information and gather our own data on possible causes and impairments of the impairments, and we'll also identify potential solutions, which can consist of on-the-ground projects as well as education and outreach programs. Now, these projects and programs identified in this East Branch Watershed Plan will be more eligible for 319 grant funding. The mission of all of our watershed plan is to convene local organizations and individuals who have a mutual interest in protecting and preserving the water quality of natural resources within their respective watershed. And specific to the East Branch Plan, the mission is to improve the quality of the East Branch DuPage River and surrounding watershed to meet federal, state, and regional water quality initiatives. So all grant-funded watershed plans through the EPA and to be approved by the EPA must meet 9 elements. These elements are listed here. It includes identifying the causes of the impairments, estimate load reductions that could be provided by potential projects. We describe critical areas, estimate assistance needed in regards to grant funding or otherwise. The plan should involve an educational component. And then we track the progress of the plan implementation by using a project schedule with milestones and indicators. There's also a monitoring component moving forward to ensure that the plan is providing a benefit to the waterway. So in regards to the East Branch watershed, as you can see here is a map of the East Branch. It starts up in the northern end of DuPage County in the village of Bloomingdale as the headwaters, and it flows south into Will County. So we've established a memorandum of understanding with Will County so we can actually include that component of the watershed into this plan as well. So there's a total of 16 municipal stakeholders in the watershed. They're listed here, as well as unincorporated areas in 2 counties, DuPage and Will County, are included as stakeholders. So in addition to these governmental agencies, we also reach out to residential and business landowners. We look at large landowners such as the forest preserves, in the case of the East Branch, the Morton Arboretum. We include organizations such as nonprofit environmental organizations, and also concerned citizens throughout the watershed. So here is a map of the waterway itself. It flows generally from a north-south pattern through DuPage County into Will County. The East Branch DuPage River meets up with the West Branch DuPage River in Will County, and then the DuPage main stem eventually flows to the Des Plaines River. So the EPA has identified causes and sources of the East Branch impairment, which I'll go over in the next few slides. But the watershed planning process also involves conducting intensive field investigations to gather information on additional causes and sources of the impairments that may not be listed in the EPA's inventory. So this is achieved through conducting field inspections along streams, any lakes that are identified, and detention ponds, as well as conducting outreach to stakeholders who live and work along the stream system and the overall watershed. We also conduct water quality modeling to estimate the pollution from stormwater runoff, as well as the reductions that can be provided by any potential projects or solutions. So there's a lot going on here on this table. This is part of the East Branch impairments that have been identified by the EPA. So we can see the map here. It's broken up into sub-watersheds, and the main stem has also been broken up into segments. So we look at the watershed in components, in smaller components. It gives you a better scale to look at things from a detailed perspective. The EPA had divided the main stem into segments or sections for evaluation purposes, so we use those same segments in our inventory. Again, we also look at each sub-watershed or tributary individually. So those are shown here as well. So in regards to the specific impairments, you can see on this table, there are a lot of impairments that are what we call legacy contaminants or legacy pollutants, such as arsenic, methoxychlor, PCBs, dieldrin, hexachlorobenzene. Those scary sounding chemicals are legacy pollutants. So back when this area was mainly agriculture, these were included in some of the pesticides that were applied in farm fields and other areas. So these are all banned now. They're not currently used, but we still find them in the stream bank sediments. And so that's where those come into play. We also have nutrients, total suspended solids, chlorides listed here, and those come from runoff. They can come from runoff from stormwater, from upland land areas running across the surface, making their ways to the streams. And there's also sources listed such that have to do with urban development and modification of the stream. So you can see urban runoff listed here, municipal point source discharges, alteration in stream side vegetative covers. Those are things that we can address through different projects, which I'll go into a little bit later in the presentation. So just to list the other 2 main step segments here, a lot of the same impairments listed. And finally, we have some of our tributaries that have been identified as impaired. Same sort of causes and sources. We have Armitage Ditch, Glencrest Creek, and Lacey Creek, along with St. Joseph's Creek listed here. Those are just a few of our tributaries. DuPage County staff will be conducting inventories and assessing all of the tributaries. So we're going to take a look at the ones that haven't been identified as impaired, but we know contribute to the overall impairment of the East Branch. Just a quick note, St. Joseph's Creek tributary of the East Branch, down on the lower right part of the slide of the watershed. We had conducted a St. Joseph's Creek watershed plan. It was completed back in 2017. So we're not excluding it from the plan, but we're not going to be reevaluating that one again. It will just be included as a attachment to the East Branch plan. So it's included all of our maps, but all the studies and assessments have been completed for St. Joseph's Creek already. So I keep mentioning the stream assessments. I'll go into those a little bit more. So we're scheduled to conduct a thorough stream assessment of the East Branch and the tributaries, summer of 2020. So this includes an inventory of stream conditions such as erosion, channelization, sedimentation, and also an assessment of the size and condition of the riparian corridor, as well as a habitat inventory. So by visiting the system, we can go on canoe or a kayak or on foot. We can gather a lot of information that can't be observed otherwise through a desktop aerial photo assessment or just by looking at maps or existing data. So we actually get out there and walk the stream or boat down the stream to gather some information. As you can see here, this nice picture of a living room set we came across during a previous stream assessment. So really being in the waterway, you can gather a lot more information that you otherwise might miss. So we also inspect every detention basin within the watershed. This is a complicated form with a lot of abbreviations, but this is the form we use to gather information. We visit every detention basin in the watershed. We've used this same form. As you can see, it's labeled Salt Creek. We've used this for other watershed plans. So we have a nice template. We gather information on the vegetation in the basin, amount of erosion, whether it has water quality components such as forebay, and then we give it an overall rating of good, fair, or poor. So this can help to identify basins that are providing a benefit to the waterway or ones that may be contributing pollution. So just to kind of give you an example of these ratings and what they mean, on the left you have a good quality basin. So this is a constructed wetland detention basin. These curvy features you see are created purposely in the bottom of the basin for the water to take a long time to move through the basin. You have a lot of interaction of the stormwater with the plants and have a lot of time for the sediments to settle out, and those native plants can absorb the nutrients and other pollutants. So that's planted with native vegetation. You have high and low spots, and it just gives the stormwater a lot of time and a lot of plant interaction to be treated. Now on the other end of the spectrum, we have the poor quality basin on the right. A poor quality basin may have severely eroded shorelines, which are contributing sediment. It could have garbage accumulation, as you see here, or it could be vegetated with only turf grass, so you don't have a lot of interaction with the stormwater and the vegetation, so pollutants are not removed. The Citizen Reporter app, this is another way we gather information from our stakeholders. We have had this Reporter app in use for several years now. We promote it in particular for our watershed plans to gather more information throughout the county. So it's an online and mobile application to submit stream reports directly to DuPage County. So I have the link here. Just a quick note, once you click on that link, you do need to, again, click on Waterway Reporter. There's a couple different reporters in this application, so just make sure to click on the Waterway Reporter if you're going to use it. So you can submit conditions like stream bank erosion, blockages, water quality issues, algae. If you're reporting from a mobile phone, you can actually geolocate and report something. If you're on a walk, for instance, and you notice something, you can report it from right where you're standing. On a computer, you can enter an address or click on the map and identify an area that way. You can attach photos, and these reports go straight to DuPage County Stormwater Management. So some cases we will address immediately, like a stream blockage or an illicit discharge that's causing an issue. other reports. If it's erosion, we can include that in our watershed plans. We keep that data in a database and we include it as an issue to be noted in our watershed plans, such as an eroded stream. So now that we've gathered all this information, how do we fix it? So possible solutions to water quality impairments can include green infrastructure in upland areas. So I have a bunch of examples here. That can include permeable pavers, green roofs, rain gardens, bioswales, and rainwater harvesting techniques like rain barrels or cisterns. And detention pond retrofits are a great way to turn something that may be a source of pollution into a solution. So detention pond retrofits, there's a few different things you can do. Shoreline stabilizations is a good way to, you can see an example here of an eroded shoreline. Stabilizing those shorelines helps keep the sediment in place. You can replace turf grass basins with native plants, or a complete conversion to a constructed wetland basin, where you're incorporating those water quality features and constructing a complex wetland system at the bottom of the basin. Stream and riparian restoration projects. So as we conduct those stream assessments and we find our problem areas, we can identify areas that we can implement solutions as well. So that can be stream bank stabilization, whole stream restoration projects where you're incorporating micropools and habitat features within the stream, and also riparian plantings. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not just on the ground projects. Education and outreach should also be included. So that can include programs such as storm drain medallions, rain barrel programs, pet waste cleanup, outreach, and promoting and educating on native plants. So moving forward, we were scheduled to have our first stakeholder meeting in April. It was postponed due to the stay-at-home orders. Moving forward, we're going to be reaching out to those stakeholders for what will likely be a Zoom stakeholder meeting. We're hoping to do that soon. And we can start talking about how to improve the East Branch DuPage River watershed together. So with that, I look forward to any questions.
Okay. I think we have a couple questions rolling in here. Let's see. Okay, so it has been shown that having a watershed plan is an effective way to remove impairments compared to watersheds without a watershed plan. I guess that was a question. Did I not read that right?
Can you say that one more time?
Yes, I will. So has it been shown that having a watershed plan is an effective way to remove impairments compared to watersheds without a plan?
Yes. So with the watershed plan, we're really taking a close look at those impairments and what's causing them, and the solutions are tailored to those impairments. So if a issue in the watershed, for instance, is sediment, we can look at sources of sediment such as stream bank erosion or urban area wash off, and the projects are tailored to those specific impairments to address them. And we also have, like I mentioned, the milestones in the beginning. So we might set a milestone of, for instance, a 5% reduction in sediments in the waterway in 5 years. And so we'll work to achieve that goal of reduction.
Okay, very good. Here's another question, Mary Beth. Do watershed plans have to be updated on a regular basis?
They should be updated on a regular basis. It's not something you want to create and then put on a shelf. And so not only should we be working towards implementing some of those projects that are listed, but you want to reevaluate because landscapes do change, regulations change, land use change, and so you want to make sure you're addressing the current condition.
Okay, very good, thank you. Here's another one. Can you explain the stormwater medallions?
Yes, absolutely. So you may have heard of a storm drain stenciling program. It's similar to that. They are both, it's a way of labeling a storm drain so the public knows where they're leading to. So we often find illicit discharges or dumping in a storm drain where people think it goes to the treatment plant. So a simple thing like labeling the inlet or stormwater inlet and letting people know that this goes directly to the river can really help to remedy some of those pollution problems that are caused by dumping in a storm drain, just by letting people know that it actually goes right to the river and not to a treatment plant.
Okay, thank you. Another quick one, does the watershed, I guess that's the East Branch, include any dams?
Let me think here. Yes, there was the Churchill Dam along the East Branch that was actually removed. It was a county project that was removed, I want to say 6 or 7 years ago. There are still some smaller dams along the East Branch that we will evaluate and take a look at. I know there's a couple that are related to hydraulic modifications, and so that's looked at a case-by-case basis. There may be some that are smaller that aren't, as a big project as the Churchill Dam removal, but they'll be evaluated during the stream assessment process.
Okay, very good. Another quick question came in about the medallions. Let's see, where did I see that? Oh, shoot, now I can't find it.
Well, I want to make another note about the storm drain medallions while you're on that, while you're looking for that.
Yeah.
That is a program that DuPage County sponsors through the Conservation Foundation and through an organization called Scarce. And so if you have a group that is interested in not only in the East Branch, but any other watershed, we encourage you to do that. The materials are free, but we do look for volunteers to install those, and we're looking for those all the time. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to us and we can point you in the right direction if you have a group that's interested.
All right, perfect. One more here. What % of detention basins that your team has surveyed are rated as good? And can you tell me where I might find one?
Sure, that's a great question. So I'm finding that the older detention ponds, either because they've degraded over time or they were built before we really knew much about water quality, maybe they were built 30 years ago, 40 years ago, those are your more poor quality basins or that haven't been maintained over the years. The good quality basins, we're seeing more and more of those with recent development because we have regulations now that require best management practices in site development. So we are seeing more good quality detention basins. We've had a couple, even though some of those in our photo, you can see, I would say our Brewster Creek project, DuPage County's Brewster Creek Flood Control Facility. It's up in the Bartlett area. It's not in the East Branch, but that's just one example that was in my photos. It's on Stearns Road and Route 59, right behind the Home Depot. It's in the Forest Preserve. That is a great quality constructed wetland basin. One of the other photos I had was the Village of Carroll Stream has just recently, under our DuPage County Water Quality Improvement Grant Program, reconstructed a basin. Trying to think of where it's located now. If you go on the Water Quality Improvement Program website, there is a map of all the projects that we have funded through our program. There are a few detention basin construction projects on that site. Offhand, that's all I can think of right now, but I'm sure I'll think of more as I'm talking.
All right.
There's, I guess one more thing, Chris, to answer that question. So the newer basins are good quality and the older ones tend to be poor quality, but they're throughout the county.
Okay, very good. And then there was one final question. Which detention basins are best for bass fishing?
Well, I think you would, I'm not a fish expert, but I think you'd need some big open water components for that. So you would need a larger facility. But again, when you have these wetland bottom, at least part of it as a wetland bottom, and you can have a basin with a deeper part and a shallower part, but the better the water quality, the better it is for the fish and the bugs that the fish eat. So I would say if you have a nice healthy wetland component and then a large open water, I would look to the DuPage County Forest Preserves. There's a lot of good fishing opportunities there.
All right. All right, great job, Mary Beth. Great presentation. Good job answering the questions. Thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. Now we're going to turn things over to, looks like we got a trio of presenters for our next presentation, and they are Lee Hauser from Geosyntec Consultants, April Mendez from Greenprint Partners, and Kevin Riley from Resource Environmental Solutions. And they are going to be telling us about grant-funded best management practices, and these are lessons learned from St. Louis. So guys, take it over. I'm not sure who's going first.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I can start. So yeah, today's presentation will be a joint presentation, as Chris said, with April Mendez from Greenprint, Kevin Riley from RES, and then myself. We're going to talk about grant-funded BMP projects and lessons we've learned from those. So throughout the presentation, we're going to kind of give an introduction to the teaming partners, kind of walk through what all of the different consulting groups can help with, an overview of the St. Louis Metropolitan Sewer District's Rainscaping Grant Program, identifying teaming partners for the grant-funded programs, and then walking through two kind of case studies where we have either implemented and designed BMPs, and then the second one is still part of the design process. April?
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is April Mendez. I'm with Greenprint Partners, and we are a company that's based in Chicago that's exclusively focused on green stormwater infrastructure delivery. And what the aspect of our work that we're going to be talking about today is the work that we do to help private property owners build green infrastructure that is high impact and driven by their community stakeholders. We are a mission-driven company. We believe that green infrastructure can transform communities, and so our mission is to build more green infrastructure, better green infrastructure, and green infrastructure that serves all people. We are, as part of that mission base of ours, we're backed by the Kresge Foundation through their Urban Equity in Water Systems program, and we are a certified B Corporation, which means part of our corporate structure is that we are focused on impact and measuring our impact.
Kevin?
Yeah, hi, Kevin Riley with RES. We are a turnkey wetland mitigation, stormwater, green infrastructure, and nutrient provider. We're based out of Houston, but have offices all over the country. We've got a Chicago office, and then I'm located down in our St. Louis office. And we've been in the Midwest for about 3 years. And just a quick overview of kind of where we fit in and who we serve. You know, like I said, we do wetland mitigation, species mitigation, stormwater, some public works projects, and kind of work with private and industry as well as public municipalities. And, you know, we like to kind of, like I said, provide a turnkey solution where, you know, we're taking the risk off of either an applicant or a municipality and trying to provide some sort of wetland or stormwater solution for them.
Cool. Kind of talking to Geosyntec Consultants. We are an environmental engineering consulting firm. Within that, our group focuses on water and natural resource services, including both stormwater planning and design and Clean Water Act compliance. So we do, obviously these are both kind of overlapping. So we do a range of different types of green infrastructure, planning, stream restoration, permitting as well, but then combining that with Clean Water Act compliance and nutrient reduction and lake management and additional wastewater treatment support. So we'll move into what an overview of the St. Louis MSD Rainscaping Grant Program is.
Great. So the St. Louis Metropolitan Sewer District has a consent decree that requires them to spend $120 million on building green infrastructure on private properties, privately owned properties, off right-of-way properties. And they have turned a lot of that into a green infrastructure incentive or green infrastructure grant program, which is kind of a category of programs that I'll talk a little bit about that exist in a number of municipalities and utilities across the country, where the utility is offering a financial incentive to get large property owners and small property owners as well, residential property owners, to install green infrastructure on their own property and essentially act as part of the distributed infrastructure network for stormwater management. So it's a way to bridge the needs of the utility in terms of providing stormwater infrastructure and the owners of the land assets, which are by and large property owners, and the financial incentive helps to bring those two together such that the utility can be essentially building infrastructure on these private properties. There are lots of cities across the country that have a green infrastructure grant program. The four that are listed here are the most robust of those. Philadelphia has an annual budget of $25 million that's provided for green infrastructure grants. That funding may go down this year in a COVID-19 world. They pay somewhere in the range of $150,000 to $200,000 per greened acre, and in exchange for the landowner building the green infrastructure on their site, they get a bill credit on their stormwater utility fee of up to 80%. In the Philadelphia case, the landowner is committing to build the green infrastructure and then to maintain the green infrastructure for a minimum of 45 years. And there's a maintenance easement that's placed on the deed of the property such that any future buyers of that property would also have that same maintenance restriction. And that is something that exists across all of these programs. In the example of St. Louis, they have $120 million total dedicated to this over about 23 years. It's a kind of a spend down program. They're allocating about $5 million a year, give or take. They're not terribly strict on that. Their reimbursement level is about $180,000, but it can go up above that as well. And the maintenance requirement on the landowner is permanent. So as soon as you've installed this, you have to maintain it in perpetuity. San Francisco just launched their program in 2019 at a $4 million pilot scale, and they will pay up to $765,000 per greened acre or drainage acre that's being managed. That's a clear reflection of the cost of doing business and the cost of construction in San Francisco. And their maintenance requirement is a 20-year requirement. New York City also has a private property program. You can see some details of that here. It's about $10 million a year. They're paying about $250,000 per acre. And it looks like I forgot to add the maintenance duration there. So we'll come back to that if you need that. So then I want to talk about what the role of Greenprint Partners has been in these incentive programs, and particularly in St. Louis, though our model is pretty similar in each of the cities that we're working in, and we're working in St. Louis, Philadelphia, and San Francisco at present. So we'll go to the next. Great. So our role in these projects is oftentimes the utility doesn't have the capacity to go out and directly recruit landowners to participate in their grant program. So the folks that come to them proactively are people who already have capacity, who already are maybe planning a project, who already have design engineers at the ready. but anybody who isn't in that position is not going to respond. So we play a kind of a middle person role, going out and recruiting landowners, and we particularly bring a focus to low and moderate income communities, given our mission focus. One of the things that we're trying to drive is more equity in the ways that investments in stormwater infrastructure are being made, so that those investments are being made into the communities that will benefit the most from them or need them most. So we recruit the landowners. We then do pretty much everything in terms of getting ready to apply for the grant. The landowner provides input and guidance on the design, and they of course sign off on the requirements and say this is something that they definitely want to do, and they're on board to maintain the BMPs once they're installed. And then we submit the application on their behalf. And once the project is awarded, in many cases, these are reimbursement-based programs. In St. Louis, that's the case. The utility doesn't pay until the project has been constructed and validated. So we're looking at, an 18 to 24-month gap in terms of when funds are starting to flow out for the project to the time that they get reimbursed. So again, landowners like churches or schools or nonprofits don't have a balance sheet and aren't going to go out and do the borrowing to be able to cover that. So that's something that we orchestrate for them. And then we manage the design and construction along with our partners, in this case, in St. Louis, it's been Geosyntec and RES. And then once the project is constructed, we train their facilities staff or help them identify a contractor to do maintenance and train that contractor on the maintenance. We provide an O&M manual specific to their property and then hands-on training. And we particularly emphasize with the landowners that engaging their stakeholders, their communities, is really fundamental to the success of the project. And so we're very proactive around how we do that with them. The reasons we think that stakeholder engagement is so critical, probably not news to any of you on this webinar, but first, that green infrastructure has the potential to truly be transformative for communities, but it's best suited to do that if it has the input of community members as to what benefits, what co-benefits are really important to them. So we want to identify, is it physical activity? Is it a space for social interaction? Is it air quality? What are the co-benefits that matter most to them? And then we engage our design work specifically to optimize for those benefits. The other reason to engage community members, we think, is kind of a risk mitigation strategy in terms of long-term maintenance. As we all know, green infrastructure is something that communities that is still new to communities, the look of it, the function of it, the purpose of it. And so it's more at risk for people vandalizing or mowing it over because they don't know what it is, or they just don't like the way it looks. So we want to engage and educate people as the project is happening so that they see this as something that is exciting and something really to be proud of and to protect. So all of that leads to a kind of a full process in terms of our engagement of stakeholders that starts at the very beginning with some awareness building and getting the key decision makers and a broader community of stakeholders committed. And then we also do a benefits-driven design workshop. That's a more in-depth opportunity for not only the landowner, but also their stakeholders, which might mean, in the case of a church, a full congregation. Where we'll do education about what green stormwater infrastructure is and a deeper dive into the benefits that they would like to see achieved through the design of the green infrastructure. I'll skip forward then to a couple of other community elements. Once we get through to the construction, then we work with the landowner to do a public celebration. They've also gotten some communication support from us throughout, press releases, social media bites, etc., so that they're able to bring their whole community along throughout the entire process.
Thank you. So kind of moving forward, we'll now move into where we talk through kind of these two sites in St. Louis. So the first teaming partner was the Greenprint community site.
Yep, so this is a site that our nonprofit affiliate, Greenprint Communities, so we're Greenprint Partners, Greenprint Communities is our nonprofit affiliate, and Greenprint Communities purchased this property in order to be able to transform some vacant land that was owned by the land bank, the Land Reutilization Authority, and to transform that into a public space amenity. The stakeholder advisory group for this project was a pretty broad coalition of folks, including the Aldermen, the Green City Coalition, which is a citywide coalition advocating for better green space use, the Land Reutilization Authority, which is the land bank, and then there were some homeowners associations and block club groups that we worked with as well to get their input on the design of the site. The middle part is the institution. That's the nonprofit arm of Greenprint Partners, as I said. And then we did do a lot of community engagement as well, volunteer days on the site, et cetera, to prepare the site. Again, as an opportunity to build public pride. And this is in the Wells Goodfellow community, which is a low and moderate income community in St. Louis, and it's a majority minority community as well.
Moving over to Kevin.
Yeah, so, when we teamed up with Greenprint, and one of the first things we started looking at was, how big of a drainage area are we dealing with? What's our concept design? What type of dollars are we working with for construction and design? And those are the things, you just got to do on any project from a planning level. What makes it a little, difficult here is, you're obviously, only dealing with a set amount of dollars in terms of reimbursements from MSD. So, you're trying to do a conceptual design that you think will cover yourself as you move further down the line. But, there's that push-pull of not investing fully in a full design survey if you don't know the project will be funded. So it's just a little bit of a balancing act, but working with Geosyntec and Greenprint, I think we pulled it off well. So the two main agencies we're dealing with is St. Louis MSD, which is the sewer district, and then the city of St. Louis, their Board of Public Service. Once you start manipulating the public right away, and we are doing that where we're trying to convey water into these biofiltration basins, they have a strong interest, obviously, and it comes up in terms of, where does their maintenance end and ours begin, and, getting just the permits to construct in the right of way, getting a special use permit for the site. It's zoned as residential, so proposing to put a biofiltration basin on these sites was a little bit of a challenge. And then working with MSD is kind of a more formalized process, and they've been down this road before. The kind of where it gets a little trickier is just the fact that MSD will not move forward with approving your plans until the city buys in, and the city had kind of a less formal process in terms of timelines and approvals. That was a little difficult to navigate. They're still kind of getting their feet wet in understanding these projects, and certainly we were not the first one to propose something like this, but we're definitely in that first group of 10 or so projects. And I think the amount of drainage area that we have captured is definitely one of the larger ones. There's been a few pilot projects with MSD, and obviously had some city involvement as well. But I think the number of conveyances we had and just the overall scale and scope was a little different for them, and so just took a little bit more navigation through the city to approve. And so once you finally get your plans set and everything's approved, you get to start to make a mess out there, and just kind of a real quick run through of how a biobasin gets built in a city with combined sewer overflow or combined sewer system. First you're excavating and you're grading and getting your basins set and coming in and putting in your sewer structures. You can see that area inlet in the top left there. And that's acting as your overflow. And so we're tying that back into the sewer system. And that way, if we get a large enough rainfall that, we're not flooding out the adjacent lots and street, it's all going back into the sewer system. And then after that, you come in and you're doing your bioswale mix of, 6 inches of gravel, 6 inches of sand, and 36 inches of soil mixture. And we're planting that and stabilizing that and getting our, our rock swales set and our floor bays and our all our conveyances set on the lower left there. You can see how we, kind of repitch some alleyways, and Lee will go into a lot more detail on that, but that's kind of the end result is now the alley drains to our basin. And just the bottom right there, kind of just probably last July, just after we were kind of finished with the soil and the forebay and everything was graded out. And you can see some plants just in the kind of the midpoint of that basin that we're getting ready to install. And that was last July, and just went out there yesterday, and things are starting to sprout up and look a little green, but not full out yet. And give it another month or two, and I think it'll be looking a lot better. So go ahead, Lee.
Thank you. So now I'm going to kind of talk about kind of the design approach. And so one thing that, St. Louis MSD, obviously, if they've developed this grant program, they've also developed a BMP toolbox. And so with that, they had a lot of very good structural design requirements. And so the bioretention cells were to be designed to capture the water quality volume, which in St. Louis, that is 1.14 inches of rainfall. With that, the bioretention facility also had to provide 75% of the stormwater quality volume, and then ponding depth would range from anywhere 0.5 to 1.5 feet, and it had to drain down within 2 feet. As Kevin indicated, we did also have to work with the city of BPS, so they had some rules, along with additional rules with MSD, outside of just their general BMP. We had to use the rationale method to calculate peak discharge and what would be flowing into the basin. Outlet pipes had to be designed to flow 80% full during the 20 or 20 minute. And one thing with the St. Louis MSD and their maintenance and rules and regulations, they have site-specific charts that are catered to them that you have to use. You're not recommended or encouraged to use NOAA. With that, we're supposed to assume 50% impervious for residential, 100% impervious for commercial, and then design overflow structures for the 100-year, 20-minute. Kind of going back, so as you can see, this area is heavily urban, residential, and with a lot of open green space. Moving into kind of, with that, we kind of broke this site into 4 drainage cells. And so on the left, you kind of get our drainage map. This in total was about 5.4 acres of drainage area. With that, the different colors, so this tan is residential or classified as residential from City of St. Louis. This pink is more your commercial, and then green is where the bioretention cell is. So there's about 3.8 acres of residential and 0.8 acres of really primarily right-of-way. And so then on the right is kind of our design. We designed small concrete ribbon swales to capture water runoff from the alleys, and then they would come into the bioretention cell via riprap swales, come into pre-treatment forebay, and then there'd be some large prairie grass that would kind of choke that flow down and kind of remove some of the larger material. And then there is a stormwater or a low flow stormwater conveyance channel that really then brought it down into what was the infiltration basin on the right side. There were also 2 additional inlets, kind of what was coming from the adjacent road, and then another one downstream, and we would ultimately tie back into the combined sewer. So here are 4 photos. The top ones are existing conditions, and then the bottom one are post-construction, kind of some of them are from before. So starting at the top left, as Kevin indicated, all of these alleys in St. Louis are concave center, so we had to design a way to pick up that water. So we actually had to regrade and pitch the alleyways, and then have a cross slope across that. So that was different, and it's kind of challenging to get St. Louis BPS to really jump on board. And then moving to the top right, you can see that this was a large grassed open area, and then we transitioned this into this bioretention swell, where you get your pre-treatment, your paver 4-bay type material, and then into the low flow and moving into the infiltration. Moving into the second drainage area, this one was much smaller, 0.16 acres with primarily all right-of-way contributing. And so here on the right, you can see that the bioretention cell is much smaller. And one thing when we originally started this design, that we were trying to incorporate the entire parcel. However, with MSD's reimbursement, they will only reimburse for the water quality volume design. So we had to significantly shrink it and put it only in this small section. With that, you can see on the left, this is kind of the general existing conditions. And as part of this design, we did have to replace this sidewalk. That was one thing that St. Louis BPS had asked for as well, to make sure that we're improving the community and really providing benefit for other people, since we're already going in and doing these designs. And so since the bioretention cell was not directly up against the right-of-way, we had to design a way to pull the water outside of the right-of-way and into the bioretention cell. So this is what we call our roadside curb inlet. So water would come out and pass under the sidewalk and then ultimately discharge into the bioretention cell through riprap armoring. Kind of moving to, again, here's the third drainage area, still made up of primarily residential, and there's actually some commercial here, which is just a building and in that pink. And then here again are kind of those before and after photo. On the left, we got, again, a lot of the open space, and then on your right, you get a transition of kind of right after construction, and then the bottom one is post-construction once the vegetation has started to grow. Moving into the last one within this site, this is the second largest, about a 0.84 acre, primarily made up of open space, or what was classified as residential, and then a little bit of commercial on the top. And so this one actually had 2 inlets in on both sides of the alleyway, and you can see that here. So again, on the top, we have our existing conditions, or what was pre-construction photos. So in the top left, it's a gravel alley, or not gravel, sorry, brick alleyway. And I've called out there where the proposed inlet will be, and then going down, you can see, again, that same concept from before, where there's a curb inlet that passes the water underneath the sidewalk and into the bioretention cell. And then on the right, we have 2 more photos. The top one is the pre-construction, where it's just an asphalt alley, and we would do more of the general concrete ribbon swales where we regrade it to pitch it in towards the bioretention cell. And then there's a riprap gravel apron that kind of transitions into the bioretention cell. And so in total, we had 4 bioretention cells for this Greenprint community site, all varying in size. However, they all kind of had that same general idea of really what was being designed to capture and convey. So moves us on to the second teaming partner, which was the Central Baptist Church.
Great. So Central Baptist Church is the oldest historically Black church west of the Mississippi. It's located near downtown St. Louis, or kind of midtown. The stakeholder advisory group is the trustees, the board of trustees that we've engaged throughout the entire process of design. And then the community of Central Baptist has largely been their congregation. We did a benefits-driven design workshop for the full congregation, as well as some educational videos to be shared during church services as well.
So same process here, just a little bit different of a site. You know, we're dealing much more with pavement and sidewalk, and not as much, you know, open green space. But again, you know, same team. Greenprint brought us in, and we were working with Geosyntec to try to come up with some solutions, and that same challenge to just, you know, planning out on a conceptual level what we can do is, and what we can move forward for funding. Again, same challenges with both agencies. This one maybe a little bit more even. You know, we've got kind of a main thoroughfare going through, and we're proposing these large kind of bump outs. What you see on the top photo there, that's not what's installed, but very representative of kind of the look and shape of what we're trying to do out there. And you know, you're dealing with existing parking and street regulations, so just navigating that and getting again city buy-in on something like this, which is it's been, you know, I think the Greenprint site helped in our case in terms of what we can do and what we're capable of. And so it's moving through the approval process right now.
So this is just building back on what Kevin had. So moving into the design, as you said, a lot of the same, or really all of the same design approaches applied. However, we had to really transition to being limited by the space, and then obviously with it being a much more concrete and asphalt surfaces, the dollar value went up. So there was a lot of kind of limitations in size of the BMPs. So here on the left, this is the typical detail of what the bioretention cell will look like. It'll be right within the right-of-way, butt up against the existing sidewalk, and then encroach into the roadway. When we met with the City of St. Louis BPS, they were big fans of building within the road, because this is currently a 2-lane road with already diagonal parking. So they were a fan of really using these BMPs as a way to help with traffic control. And then here on the right are 2 kind of example photos that where I took to kind of really build on or give you guys that conceptual idea of what we're trying to, really what the BMP will look like. There'll be a little bit of a sediment forebay where water will come directly off the road surface in there to act as more of a pre-treatment, and then overflow and go into that infiltration area where there's vegetation and things like that. So here's a kind of an overview. The Central Baptist Church is this white building right here, and they also own kind of these additional properties. But on the north side, we had kind of 2 BMPs that'll be encroaching in. One thing with this being right across from the church, there was a large recommendation or a request that we don't remove parking spots, because this is kind of the VIP parking area. And so really with that, as we were installing and identifying BMPs, we were trying to reduce the overall footprint, but still kind of meeting that design green infrastructure intent. And additionally, as part of that, again, going back to the St. Louis BPS, they asked us to kind of do a corner redesign. So that was kind of outside of really what the original design intent was. However, we were able to work with BPS to make these corners ADA approved and really kind of meeting with that general design intent. So these green areas on the right are where the proposed BMPs will go once implemented. Similar idea on the opposite side of the street. Again, roadside BMPs. However, there was a little bit of a green space just adjacent to the church's parking lot. So we were going to do more of the original BMPs kind of presented as a green print, where you have some grading and more kind of just that visually aesthetic BMP that also serves as a volume reduction. So kind of on the downstream or down adjacent side, so this is kind of further down to the southwest, but they have the church owns a large vacant or basically a parking lot. And as you can see, the parking lot's not in the best shape. So this was identified as a area to remove all the asphalt and build that traditional bioretention cell with plants and other vegetation to create that visually aesthetic option, while also being able to remove a lot of volume that would flow into the combined sewer system. So these are 2 pictures of where the bioretention cell would go, kind of down here. And with that, Kevin.
Yeah, so current status of the project is we're trying to get our final approvals. We've had lots of back and forths with MSD and St. Louis BPS, and we're pretty close to the goal line, but we're just not there yet. And unfortunately, all the COVID kind of threw a monkey wrench just in terms of timing and approvals and who's in the office and can review plans. But I'm hoping within the next month or so we can get approved and get out there and start construction. That photo there is just kind of the last linchpin that's in our way, and it just has to do with trying to put in a speed bump in that alley so we can direct some of the flows that we had initially calculated into that basin Lee was just showing, that larger basin in that parking lot that Lee was showing. And that's the only thing holding us up right now.
So kind of lessons learned from the grant-funded BMP design. One of those is kind of coordinating the maintenance agreements and responsibilities with stakeholders and conducting those maintenance activities and training with them. Obviously, as April kind of alluded to earlier, there are with these green infrastructure, there's a lot of additional need to make sure the community is bought in and is willing to maintain these. And it does take some training where this might not be in their traditional background. And so it's important to provide them an understanding of really what needs to happen to be able to successfully maintain these green infrastructure. Kevin?
Yeah, and I think, I alluded to it earlier, but just that process of, trying to do a conceptual design and preliminary design and trying to get your budgets in order when you don't know if you're going to be funded and can pay for the full engineering costs. So just that push-pull of, everybody trying to make their best professional judgment and get this thing planned as early as possible and feel like you're covered on your grant application.
And then the last kind of lesson learned was the importance of designing BMPs to be adaptable to changing hydrologic conditions. I know that obviously we're all aware, or hopefully aware, that we are seeing more frequent, heavier rainfall storms. And so one thing with this program, St. Louis MSD does not provide any incentive or allow for over-design to account for increases in rainfall depth. Obviously, I understand that these are grant funded, but there could be additional mechanisms to provide that incentive, say either a match of some sort or that reduced cost in the storm sewer service charge. So I think it's important for these grant funded programs to also provide that adaptability to these increases in rainfall depths. And with that, are there any questions?
Yes, great job, guys. Thank you very much. We do have a couple questions that came in. This first one looks like it might be for April. It says, can you elaborate on the landowner training program? What does it involve and how long is the training?
Unfortunately, April had to jump off at 1. Kevin, I don't know if you can kind of speak to that.
Sure. So I know just from working with Greenprint, what they like to do is give kind of like an early educational tutorial to the potential landowner. And, as they try to get them to buy into the green infrastructure program in St. Louis, they're also teaching them, what green infrastructure is, how it benefits, their facility, the community, and what's involved on the maintenance portion of it, once the facility is built and what they'll need to do. So they do a lot of outreach and a lot of education, and I'm sure I'm doing it a disservice of the full picture. So please feel free to reach out to them for more information. But they're a great organization and a great partner on these projects.
Okay, great, thank you. Just one more here. Homeowners associations can be a barrier by banning planting of plants by homeowners. Has outreach focused on homeowners associations to get regulations changed?
So we, in this project, in this kind of grant funding and the location, there's not too many homeowners associations in this part of St. Louis. Now, I do know just in general terms, St. Louis MSD extends well into the St. Louis County, and they deal with a lot of homeowners associations, and they do have kind of the same specs and the same protocols for any new development for a stormwater basin. And St. Louis MSD actually has a preferred planting list, and it's a full suite of natives and habitat friendly plants, and it seems to be in a lot of cases that I'm aware of that the homeowners association is encouraged to work off of that planting plan, and there hasn't been any hindrances that I've seen between them.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so there were a couple more questions, but we're going to move on to the next presenter, and we'll come back to questions if we have more time at the end of the final presentation. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Very good job. And right now we are going to turn things over to Patrick McPartland. Patrick is with the Kane DuPage Soil and Water Conservation District. And Patrick is going to be telling us about the Illinois Urban Manual. Take it away, Patrick.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to try out sharing this screen here. So sorry, I was having some technical difficulties earlier, but let's see here. And so, oh, don't freeze on me. All right, so, oh, you guys get to see my notes too, lovely. So I don't have to read them. So I could run through this pretty quickly. I know we're short on time and some people want to get out of here on time. So I'm going to talk about the Illinois Urban Manual. We just came out of a 604B grants where I sat in on as the website administrator and took over for Ashley Kern as the grant administrator. So yeah, so what is the Illinois Urban Manual? I'll go over that, what it is, where you can find it, how you could use it. To talk about the updates and what we got out of the last grant cycle and what is to come for the next potential grant cycles. So, so what is it? It's a technical reference guide that we use, or many different people, as you can see here, developers, planners, engineers could use. Inspectors use it a lot. I'm an inspector on behalf of the Army Corps, the IEPA, and also the cities of Aurora, Batavia, North Aurora. I use this as a guidance to assess compliance, and we also use it as a reference for reviewing stormwater pollution prevention plans that get submitted to our office. It contains standards and specifications, including best management practices, and it has origins in rural areas. The NRCS started the Urban Manual, and it has been taken over since by a group that currently works on it. And I'll go into that. Pretty much consists of these sections that you see right here. The sections highlighted in red are the ones that are constantly changing. And it's interesting. Ooh.
Patrick, I took it over because
Yeah.
your slides weren't advancing. So I'll go ahead and advance them for you, okay?
Oh, that's awkward. Okay. So yeah, Mike, right at this one. Thank you. So as you can see, the ones in reds are practice standards, construction specifications, standard drawings. Those are constantly being changed. Questions are constantly being brought to the table. Answers are being proposed, and a bunch of discussions are going back and forth in order to revise those as good as possible and to reduce the amount of sediment that's leaving a construction site or an ag field as possible. Next slide, please. Or is it? Yeah. Okay, so another going in further on the what, it is pretty much predominantly funded from IEPA grants. Like I mentioned, we did deal with a 604B grant the last quarter, so the 2009 last round, so 2019. And it's a cooperative multi-agency organization. So it consists of a steering committee, which is pretty much governmental agencies gathering together, trying to give unbiased opinions towards things. And then we have a technical resource review committee, which is comprised of those public agencies, which I mentioned, and also including professional consultants and engineers. And together we just formulate what needs to be done. And then for the steering committee, more specifically, we have Association of Soil Water Conservation Districts, so a lot of SWCD members, Army Corps of Engineers, IEPA contribution, Department of Transportation, IDOT, and we also recently had the Department of Natural Resources reaching out to us and to reevaluate the effectiveness of erosion control blanket and its impact on wildlife long term. So we were going to have a meeting about that, but with everything going on, we had to put that meeting on delay. And next slide, please. So with IRO 10 permits and IRO 40 permits, they are mentioned in the Illinois Urban Manual is mentioned in both of them. So kind of, you could always like kind of fall back on that as me as a inspector and also a reviewer. So if I didn't make this point clear, this Illinois Urban Manual is like the baseline. It's like the standard of what to do. You could go above and beyond with like a Department of Transportation spec, but this is the standard that we look for in order to assess compliance. And next slide. So as a part of that last 604B grant, we did revise the website. So previously it was under the Association of Illinois Soil Water Conservation Districts website. It was just it was a tab on their website, but now we have our standalone website, and we try to keep it as active as possible with the revised practice standards. This is where you could go, and when a new standard is released, it goes to public period, and you could see different requests for this screenshot right here. You could see the request for proposals when we send out our requests for updates and standards and drawings. And you could come here for educational opportunities, galleries, and we have a video gallery too, and we hope that the video gallery one day could be used to offer up PDH credits and kind of just a gathering of professionals related to soil erosion sediment control. Next, please. And then pretty much an overview of the whole process, like what there is to offer. The most important things, honestly, are the practice standards and then the standard drawings that are associated with it. So in the practice standards, you'll get a definition of the practice, its applicable uses, and just general guidelines in terms of maintenance. And then we also have the corresponding standard drawings, which engineers could come to our website, incorporate that into their stormwater pollution prevention plan, and then they can use that as guidance throughout the life of the project. And then next. And then how do you use it? Yeah, you go to the website and you use that as a reference, and then you take it out to the field with you, and you make sure that the installation is proper, the maintenance is proper, and the selection meets the expectation. And then is the practice being used properly? Is it according to specifications, and is it being maintained appropriately? So next. So what's new? So this is that 2019 grant cycle. We sent out a request for proposal for the basin standards, sub-pit, the temporary causeway, culvert inlet protection. I'll go into those further. And then within the TRC and the steering committee, we revised the dewatering standard, one that we use most frequently, definitely. So next, please, or at least I do. So what is to come? This is what was part of our 2021 grant proposal. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that picture on the right there. That is the East Branch, and that's a project that we currently inspect on behalf of the Army Corps, and that's a great representation of a bunch of different stream bank stabilization mechanisms in place in order to stabilize that stream bank. So with that new, we're going to look more into permanent vegetation, temporary vegetation, and different things that just need general upkeep and updates. Next, please. And move it forward, just we're trying to get more of a green infrastructure focus and something that'd be more useful for watershed groups, because I know a lot of watershed plans have best management practices proposed, and we would like to have them use the urban manual as a reference in order for like those stream bank stabilizations or maybe permeable pavements or other green infrastructure practices. And we want to make it website, we want to enhance the website, and we want to simplify that question in the field to the answer in the field process. So you got a question, you go to the website, you hopefully get an answer by the time you leave the site. So yeah, we'll wait to see about that grant. Next, please. So I mentioned dewatering just as an example. We always refer to this whenever I'm doing inspections, and I refer to the Illinois Urban Manual Standard 813 for dewatering guidance. So it's always telling them to place the bag on top of a stabilized surface so it has a stable pathway of conveyance to discharge beyond to an offsite. So you can see a couple good representations for the 3 pictures below. And next, please. And then I'm going to dive into the RFPs that we got in return. Hay and Associates was the consultant that worked with us to make these revisions. And as you can see here, this so their role was to take a practice and try to standardize it as much as possible, so it could be applicable across a lot of different sites and different examples. So this is like what I was saying before, the bare minimum. So you could enhance what's on here, but this is the minimum expectations we have when we're inspecting something like this. So next, please. And then the next one is the extended basin. So this for a little bit of a larger site, and you see the changes. If you went back and forth, you'd see that the sediment forebay was included, and also the micro pool. And then you could see the change in the cross sections below. And yeah, so next slide, please. And then we also had another basin revision, which is the wetland or constructed wetland. And this one relies heavily on the use and functionality of the vegetation to kind of slow down and kind of help the settling process and help target specific pollutants before they have the capability of leaving the site. So next, please. And then this like the dry basin, but the wet basin. So it has a permanent standing pool in it, and it's just some of them have its reasoning for using wet basins. Some of them have reason for using dry basins. So we have this included as well. Next one, please. And then sub pit was also revised. So you see the standard drawing here. And I like to think of the sub pit of kind of the last stand for most of these construction sites. So you can see in this picture here that that's the final stormwater basin of the site. And then a lot of back and forth about this drawing and what is actually consistent of that that bottom spec right there. So with the riprap and the spacing, and there's always all this back and forth. So next slide, please. And then the sediment forebay. I don't see these too frequently, but it takes advantage of that spillway, and it really takes advantage of finding a capability of enhancing the settling time of the practice. And yeah, so that one too. Next slide. And so culvert inlet protection, very important, best management practice. You see it's standard use, and the methods, there's plenty of methods to use it for. So it was really hard to standardize this practice. But as you'll see in that next slide, that they did a good job of covering most of it. So you could see right here is on the picture is an example of a culvert inlet protection. Just kind of that, once again, like that last stand on the site, because that culvert right there, that's going to make its way into a jurisdictional stream. And that's kind of where the priority for every site inspection is, especially for that site. So maintenance is essential, and there's a lot of considerations to take in place for the practice itself. So next one, please. And then this is the standard drawing that they came up with. As you can see, different options. You got the stone, the sediment log, and then the monofilament barrier, which we don't really recommend in concentrated flows, but getting a little ahead of myself. So I'm sure there will be a lot of back and forth for this practice, and looking forward to the public review comment period. So next slide, please. And then next one, and the last one that they gave us a revised standard for. Actually, this one we did not have a standard for, so they created a standard based off of the research that they found online. So temporary causeway, it allows you to work in the river and do a bunch of work in kind of a dry area. So it takes advantage of culverts underneath it to allow water to run through. So you'll see in that there's a lot of considerations for this one, and then it has the vented and unvented options down there. And obviously there'd be a lot of interest in this practice because you could see the fish passages and the timing of activities are very important. So I imagine the Department of Natural Resources will have some feedback for the revised versions of this. So next one, please. So if you haven't seen a causeway before, the picture right there to the left, the contractor for this site was willing to share these photos with me. So you can see it's taken over. This is a project in Aurora. They're constructing a pedestrian bridge across the Fox River. So you can see they have their temporary work area, but you can't see in this picture. If it was zoomed out a little further, you'd see that the other half of the river was unimpacted. So at this point in time, until they'll eventually just flip to the other side of the river and move the causeway. But you can see where it crossed, there are culverts in place and they have their temporary work areas. And yeah, so you can see the corresponding illustration that goes with it. I'm saying it again, it's pretty hard to standardize this stuff, but it's something to work off with. And yeah, so next slide. And just like to say special thanks to contributors, to IEPA for helping us with funding, to everybody who's contributed their time in the TRC and steering committee. And also big shout out to Megan Andrews, who actually made most of the slides, and Rick McAdlis, who have kind of been carrying the Illinois Urban Manual update forward in the past couple of years, and without them, who knows where it would be today. So next slide. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You got my email right there. Like I say here, we're always looking for contributors, feedbacks, ideas, and feel free to contact me. And if you have any questions or anything, Soil Water Conservation District's always here to help. So thank you for your time.
All right, great job, Patrick. Thank you very much. We do have one question real quick. It says, does the Soil and Water Conservation District offer assistance to residents who would like to install practices on their property?
Sure thing. Yeah, so we could, if you connect with me, then we could talk a little bit further about the specifics, but there's various amounts of way that we can help out. And I could go into that right now, but it's kind of a general overview. So if you want to reach out to me, please do.
Okay, I believe, Patrick, you had your contact information in your last slide, or one of the last slides. And yeah. So as part of this, we will, Mary Mitros will be emailing the presentations and a recording of this webinar out to everybody, as long as it's okay with the presenters.
Yeah.
Okay,
that works for me. You can find you can find our phone number and my email on our website too. So.
Okay, and we did have another question come in for Lee and Kevin, and so I think they're still with us. So the structures in the city right away seem like they would be a lot of money for a small area. Would something like replacing parking lot asphalt with permeable pavers be more cost effective?
No, not from a cost standpoint. Definitely, you know, just a conveyance system was a lot cheaper alternative than trying to do full permeable pavers. I don't have the numbers at the top of my head, but there's a significant difference.
Okay, very good. And one more. In the final phase of the project, there is evaluation. Can you talk more about this part of the phase? Do you perform surveys of wildlife, estimate pollutants removed, determine how much carbon captured, anything like that?
We don't right now. There's no metrics like that. It's more just to make sure the vegetation is growing and function, and the biofilter is functioning. That there's no standing water, no bare spots in vegetation. That's and that's being maintained properly.
Okay. And one final one. What medium do you use to communicate these results? Do you use newsletters, websites, stakeholder meetings?
Yeah, so once we turn it over to maintenance operations, it's the landowner, and they have to produce an annual report for MSD to show that they're maintaining the facility in accordance with their maintenance agreement. When we do a project, we'll have, and Greenprint as well, we'll put educational signage up, and that's permanent to kind of better explain what the project was, the benefits, the parameters of it, and the partners involved in it.
Okay. Thank you very much, guys. I think that's all we have time for. So I'd like to thank all of our presenters one more time. So thank you, Patrick and Lee, April, Kevin, and Mary Beth. I'd also like to thank all of you for joining us this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed and learned a few things from the webinar. Remember, Mary Mitros will be emailing you with copies of the presentations as well as a recording of the webinar. She'll also send out a certificate for 1.5 PDH's professional development hours for your attendance. And so until next time, be safe, be healthy. Thank you very much, and have a great day.